praying that God would send ministers to China, send ministers to India, send ministers to Africa. He could have spent his life perhaps in good, effectual prayer and making good shoes and having a good Christian testimony. But instead he went. And by the time he died, he had seen the scriptures translated into 40 languages. He had been a college professor, had founded a college at Serampore. He had seen India open its doors to missionaries and had seen the edict passed prohibiting the burning of widows on the funeral pyres of their dead husbands. And he had seen converts for Christ. And also under his leadership and under his direction, he had seen over 800 missionaries go to the field where he was working in India. On his deathbed, Carey called out to a missionary friend, "Dr. Duff, you've been speaking about Dr. Carey. When I'm gone, say nothing about Dr. Carey. Speak about Dr. Carey's God." Because William Carey realized he was no one special. That's why God could use him. He realized that. William Carey said, "Expect great things from God." And he didn't stop it there. And often we stop there. He goes on to say, "Attempt great things for God." Please, some of the things I want to share with y'all may not offend you at all, but it might offend some people. And I don't want people to take what I say wrong. Understand that there's a balance in all things. But there's too many bodies just taking up places on church pews here in America. Just taking up space. We know that the call to go into all the world has been given. It's reiterated every time we open our Bibles. And so often we just take up space and we think it's someone else is going to do it. I realize completely with a message like this, not everybody here is going to do what Denny Green does. Not everybody's going to do what William Carey does. It may be something totally different than anyone has ever done. And it may be in man's eyes something very small and insignificant. It might not involve leaving your own neighborhood. But I tell you, if it is staying in your own neighborhood, it had better be something substantive, something measurable, something real. Not just talking about the Great Commission. Where are the multitudes of laborers who understand the reality of hell, and we say we do, and the seriousness of the Great Commission that we've been given? Jesus, when he said, "Pray to the Lord of the harvest that he'll send forth laborers into the harvest." He wasn't talking to a bunch of people who said, "Yeah, let's have a prayer meeting." He was talking about to disciples who were actively involved in taking the gospel and were praying that the gospel would be advanced and laborers would come. It's not enough just to pray for laborers. If we only pray for laborers and we're not actively involved fulfilling what he told us to do, it shows we don't even believe that command. We're doing the religious thing. We're not taking it seriously. And if we say we believe in eternal hell, it's reality. And that Jesus died for everybody who's burning there. And out of our pride and our cowardice, our embarrassment, we don't share more than we do now. It's criminal. It's criminal. In the life we live, if the life we live isn't conformed to the New Testament example, then it's truly a life we've built for ourselves in spite of the gospel. God does not set us up for fruitlessness. He doesn't set us up for failure. We can never say, "God gave me this life like it is, I'm comfortable," and then live fruitless. He doesn't do that. And conforming to Christian culture, no matter how conservative it is, doesn't necessarily mean that we're conformed to biblical culture. And one thing that is so very true in all of our lives, that our American culture can and does obscure our understanding of what God's true standard is for His disciples. And it does that to us every day. So I want to ask you some personal questions. I really want you to answer them in your mind, taking seriously what I ask. Does your standard of living, I've come to realize going into China that I'm fat and rich, bottom line. I think I live modestly. We pinch pennies. By American standard, we're not wealthy at all. But by the rest of the world's standards, we're pretty doggone rich. And we can do more. So when I ask, is our standard of living keeping us from impacting the world in a very real and tangible way? Consider when Jesus was talking to the rich young ruler. And I'm not going to end this saying, hey, we all have to sell everything we have. Because not every one of the followers of Jesus did. But Jesus looked at him and realized his riches were going to keep him from being an all-out disciple. So he had to get rid of them. If the few things we have keep us from being fruitful, then we're that rich young ruler. If you can keep everything and be a fruitful disciple, hallelujah. But if everything we've got is keeping us because we've got to pay our bills, to pay for the cars we buy when we could have bought something cheaper, or the house payments when we should have bought something cheaper, or the clothes when we should have bought something cheaper, or the food when we should have eaten less. If that's keeping us from being fruitful, then we are that rich young ruler. How much money do we give? How much of our time do we truly invest? I'm speaking to me here. And how much do we keep for ourselves? Paul Washer once said, if you don't, speaking of missionaries and supporting those on the field and supporting ministries who are out there, he says, if you aren't going down into the well, you're responsible to hold the rope for those who do. Real often we can look at those examples of all those people I read about and all those people we read about in our magazines and see them as a special class. They're set up for it. They got the vision. They got the call, whatever that is. And they went, and that's them. Now we're going to kind of drift along our Christian existence. But if we're not going, we better make sure we take care of those who do. Is hell and eternity real in our thinking? And does our lifestyle back it up? Our answer. Let's read 1 Samuel 17, verses 26 through 33. For the setting, Israel was there. There was a big showdown between them and the Philistines, and Goliath is coming out every day and challenging the armies of Israel for a fight. You know the story. David is sent by his father to take some food to his brothers. David comes up and he sees this Philistine come out, and he's nobody. He has been anointed as king already in the previous chapter or two. So in God's eyes, he's something. In man's eyes, David's nobody. He's still tending to the sheep. Even the people in his own household were probably standing there when Samuel anointed him as king, still saw him as just their punk brother. You can tell by their response to him. But David spake to the men that stood by him, saying, this is when he saw this happen with the Goliath come out. What shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine, and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? Now when David asked this question, it had already been said, Saul was willing to offer his daughter to whoever go out and kill this Philistine in marriage. That wasn't what David was worried about. He was worried about the reproach that was being brought on his God. And the people answered him after this manner, saying, so shall it be done to the man that killeth him. And Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he spoke to the men, and Eliab's anger was kindled against David, and said, Why camest thou down hither? And with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know thy pride and thy naughtiness of heart, for thou art come down that thou might see the battle. He was missing it. But also, I'm sure David was thinking, what are you talking about? What battle? I see all these men of war, trained in war, cringing in their trenches. No one's fighting here. And this little shepherd boy, he's like, someone's got to go. Here am I, send me. This guy is reproaching the God of Israel, the God who sends down manna from heaven, who separates the Red Sea, who provides for us. Anybody can take this guy. And David said, What have I now done? Is there not a cause? And he turned from him toward another and spake after the same manner. And the people answered him again after the former manner. And when the words were heard which David spake, they rehearsed him before Saul, and he sent for him. And David said to Saul, Let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight this Philistine. It must have been humorous. The one person who wasn't a warrior, wasn't a soldier, said, Hey, it's okay, take it easy. I'll take care of this guy. And he had no fear. And Saul said to David, Thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight him, for thou art but a youth, and he's been a man of war from his youth. Saul was saying, You're nobody special. I want to ask if we're willing to be stretched and challenged. And are we willing to do things that we've never done before? One of the greatest lessons I've learned here and there, and I'm learning every day, and so often I forget it and I have to bring it up again, and when people reiterate it to me, I'm thankful, is that I need to do things that aren't comfortable for me when it comes to evangelism. I went to a meeting one time and a fellow was saying, and I may have shared this here, he said, when you go out on the street, go talk to the person who you're scared of. Go talk to the person who you would normally not go talk to. Some people say, oh, well, you're not being led by the Spirit. No, maybe it is. Because what happens, once we do that, we realize we can do it. As long as we don't do the things that we've never done before, we'll never do anything different. We'll always be the same person without any change in our life. No growth. Do you have a fiery heart and a zeal to serve God? Ask yourself, do you have a fiery heart to serve God? And if not, I want to ask you why you don't. Does God want us to live a sub-Christian life? And is God satisfied with us living a sub-Christian life? Our King has spoken, and I can't be found making excuses for my lack of fervor in fulfilling His great commission to us and to me. God forbid that I be found downplaying our King's direct command to us, or be found tinkering around while my life daily slips by, and I'm amazed all the time that, as old as I am, time flies by and I can't get it back. What am I doing for my King now? And what will I do tomorrow? Will I just think about a message that was preached? Will I just read another devotional and say, well, we need to pray more that laborers will be sent? Or will I be making a difference in the world around me? We have to remember where we buried those talents that were entrusted to us and see that we invest this short life well for His glory. If service for our King is a burden to us, it can only be because we've left that straight and narrow way where Jesus said He'll carry our burdens. You know, when you're walking in close fellowship with the Father, it's not hard to do the hard things. You have joy when you do it. I have found it to be so. When I'm not walking close to the Father, to say, let's go out and witness to somebody, I shake with fear. I'm scared to death of the old lady at the McDonald's drive-thru. She frightens me to death. I'm serious. But when I'm walking close to the Father, I can do things because I'm like, I have compassion. I love this person. But if a challenge to do something more and go farther brings a heaviness, an anger, or a burden to us, it's surely evidence that we are not walking close with Jesus. Because that's what He wants us to do. That's what He did. Matthew 11:28-30 says, Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly of heart, and you shall find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Now notice he didn't say, I don't give a yoke and there is no burden. He does have a yoke. He does have a burden. It's light because he's with us. He gives us power. But we're not free to do what we want to do. We are free to serve him with fire and with zeal. We're not free to live for ourselves. And we're not free just to make our house payments and our car payments and go on our vacations. 1 Corinthians 6, 19 through 20. What, know you not that your body is the temple of the Holy Ghost which is in you, which you have of God? For ye are not your own. For ye were bought with a price. Therefore glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's. If we feel powerless when it comes to a challenge, to be that person who says, here am I, send me, then we need a new vision of God. We need to see him as Isaiah saw him. And he could say, here am I, send me. If we aren't burdened, we need to get the compassion of God. The sad thing is that much of the activity in the lives of most Christians is simply not that which the Bible reveals as central to the heart of the gospel message. We often compare ourselves with other believers in our midst and we look okay. And it's easy to be a little above normal and stand out as the hero in the congregation because we're just slightly above normal. We focus on the lifestyle choices we've made that line up with the Scriptures while downplaying or overlooking those areas in our life that are antithetical to it. How does your life really compare to the life that Jesus lived? Really? How does it really compare? Not compare to the United Methodist guy down the street or the ones who ordain homosexuals, or how does it compare to Jesus? He's our only standard. Take a step back. How does it compare to those who walked with him and heard his teachings, the disciples or the apostles or the prophets or the early church? How does our life compare to that? His entire reason for coming was that men might know, love, and glorify God. Are we living lives that lead lost men to that place? Now I want to talk about something here that some may find offensive, but that's okay. I'm not asked to speak real often, so that's okay. The call. The call of God. And I put that, there is a real call of God. There are people who are called. I'm sure that Carrie would say, I'm called to this area. Go Forth would say, I'm called to China. I understand that. I'm not downplaying that. But I'm telling you, the longer I live, the more I see this call. It's used as an excuse not to do anything for the Father, rather than saying, let's go. Because we simply haven't been called. Now hear me clearly and understand where I'm coming from with this. When we become aware of ministry opportunities, do we most often say we'll pray about whether we will participate? If someone says, we're short a little bit, can you come along to the nursing home? Do we say, well, I'm going to pray about that, I'm going to pray about that. Or, can you go to the prison? Can you come out street witnessing? You haven't been street witnessing before. It scares you to death. I understand. Can you come with us? Yeah, I'll pray about that. I'm going to see if I'm called for that. How often do we say, I'll pray about it when we say, let's have a softball game? How often we say we're having a church cookout do we say, I'm going to pray about that? We're going to have a hymn sing one night. How many of us say, I might be there, but I'm going to pray about that? You see, the call is often used as an excuse to avoid hard service. Is there a desire to hear God's leading truly sincere, or an excuse to avoid the hard road of service while placing the blame of our inaction squarely on God himself? It's his fault I don't go to the nursing home, the prisons, or the street, because he didn't call me to do that. As those people die and go to hell and become harder and harder in their sin, it's God's fault. I'm a willing servant. If he just called me, I'd be there.